Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette. We're so glad you're with us to stay curious. Today, we've got a special guest. He's worked out at the Space Center 43 years, though he doesn't look that old. Okay. Ken Joseph. Welcome, Ken.
Well, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to get to know you a little bit. Ken comes away from our board president, Larry Osterly, a Rockwell man that you work for USA. Is that right?
Yeah, I worked for Larry. He was my deputy director for probably a good 3 or 4 years when I was at USA.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it was really good. He was a great guy. Really loved working with him, and glad to still be in contact with him now that he's
Yes,
retired.
Larry's our leader here at the American Space Museum. Even more so now. We'll get this out of the way that we've got our executive director, Karan Conklin, is recovering from, she's got cancer, lung cancer, and she's had another chemo treatment. She's at home, so if you want to send a card to us here at the American Space Museum, we'll make sure it gets to her. But keep Karen in your thoughts and prayers there. And Larry Osterly, who we were talking about, our board president, chairman of the board, actually, he is been keeping things together here with us a little bit there. So you're not a NASA person, you're a contractor person, so that's an error there, but which I constantly make that error. But it's quite a mix of all the contractors out there. And one of the stories I love hearing, Ken, is I work for this contractor, and I work for that one, and that one, and that one, but I never changed my seat in 20 years. Just the color of the envelope that the check came in changed.
I actually moved around, but I was the contractor that jumped around, but I did change seats more than a couple of times. So that was it's always good to see a new side of the base, being inside the gate and get to see the different things inside there.
Well, what we love talking about is the pride of the American space worker. We seriously here at the American Space Museum think space workers are national treasures. You're doing something now with Artemis that no one else is doing. You did things in the shuttle era. And Ken Joseph, as we got his name there, this is July 9th, 2024. And 13 years ago, the last shuttle that ever orbited the Earth, Atlantis, was orbiting the Earth 13 years ago. You and Marty got your walking papers. I know that dozen years or so passed by real quick.
Very quickly, it really does. I think obviously the older you get, the quicker the time goes. And you look back, it's hard to believe it was 13 years ago.
What do you want us to remember about that fabulous 30 years of the shuttle era?
The things that we did, the tragedies we recovered from, and went on and did more things after each one of those. We have a space station up there that I don't think we could have put together without this vehicle that we worked on for so very, very long. So a lot of good things came out of that, science. But I think the station, without the shuttle, I don't think the station exists.
Well, we want the station to keep existing so
Yeah.
people don't forget about the shuttle. As long as that moon's up there, they're not going to forget about Apollo and going to the moon
That's true.
55 years ago this month. But wanted to say hi to Marty Winkel behind the board there. Mentioned him just a minute ago. Marty also was a contractor, and Ken remembers Marty from organizing the athletic runs you did, the marathons and the Beat the Boss run and all that sort of stuff. So thank you, Marty, for being here today. Chime in if you want. I didn't bring my smart tablets, so we got any questions for Ken? We please welcome those from you out there. We've got regulars that watch the show, Ken,
Okay.
like Robert Laws up in Dundee, Scotland, enjoying a cocktail. We'll probably hear from Cliff Watson, who's having breakfast in Pomona, Australia, as he wakes
Wow.
up there. We've got Steve Jokums up in Illinois. Doug Forrest is in California.
This is worldwide. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Maria
That's
from
really
Ukraine.
awesome.
Pardon me?
Maria from Ukraine.
Yeah, Maria watching from the Ukraine. Good for her. And we've even got Hazel Banks watching from Merritt Island. Hazel was an Apollo secretary who's a fine contributor to us here. So please shoot Ken a question there. I'm sure if he can't answer it, that's fine. All right. We'll, but we're very always interested in things, but your career is something budget, technical liaison. This is the dollar signs in front of it that you've been involved in, right?
Yeah, and finding, everything's out, at the Space Center with any government agency, entity, there's a budget that you have to work to. In the private sector too, I'm sure, but I've never worked in the private sector, so it's only been on the government side. But you get so much money, you put a plan together and say to the contractor, or the customer, NASA, this is what we need to execute this piece of work that you've given us. And, there's the back and forth like any other, money negotiation. And then you get a final number, and it's how many people can we afford? What kind of, how much material can we buy? Subcontractors that we may have to bring on board, and things like that. And you manage, you report the variances, and you get creative in that. If I said I was going to go buy this thing, but now there's a higher priority, and that thing can go to the lower, side of the priority, then you readjust on the fly, and you just keep moving. So it's been challenging, and as I've gone through my career, I started out basically I was just a bean counter, a number cruncher, but working with a lot of good technical folks, I've been able to marry a lot of the technical with the budget aspect to be able to do the budget aspect better.
This is an area I'm fascinated with because you told me a little bit that you talk to technicians and real workers to understand what they really need.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, too many times someone sends something to Congress and it's all inflated because they know they have unknowns of what things are going to cost. But so you try to really give real life figures to the budget.
It's gotten obviously more challenging, right, as we've gone through the years. So the justification has to be crisper every year. You just can't say, well, we think it's going to be about, and then name a number. Well, why is it going to be that number? Document your assumptions. Tell us, break down. So that's where the technical aspect comes in. Immediately pops to mind is crawler shoes. We're buying new shoes for the crawler. 114 shoes on each of the 4 trucks, 57 on each of the 2 tread belts.
Wow.
So you go shop around the vendors, and we found a vendor that they were the only vendor that wanted a foundry up in Minnesota that they wanted to do the work because they want to be involved in the space program. So you write a statement of work, they come back with bids, you negotiate back and forth and nail down a price, and they get the work, and we get crawler shoes.
They each weigh a ton, don't they?
Close to, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you can throw some dollars out there to us, what does one crawler shoe cost?
Between 20 and 22,000 a piece.
Wow.
So for a full set for one truck, which is 114 shoes, it runs close to $2.5 million. And that's not just the shoe. That's the shoes, the pins, that's the whole assembly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of components that go with the shoe. But about $2.5 million.
So you spent a lot of your career with the crawler. You mentioned to me there.
Yeah. My recent career with Jacobs, because the organization I work for, we're responsible for maintenance and operations of the crawler. All the cranes and doors and the VAB. We have a heavy equipment group. They run, mobile cranes and things like that. So it's a very technician-based organization, very, very hands-on.
Huh. You mentioned something there that struck a chord with me, Ken. Companies wanting to be part of America's space program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, in my recent experience, ME Global is the outfit doing the crawler shoes. I don't know. I can't speak from experience as to how many companies these days want to be a part of it, but I do know back, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, that people were lining up to be suppliers and things of that nature. So anymore, I would like to think that people are still excited to be suppliers for the program, but I don't know how true that is anymore.
I guess is there still pride in that as we get older and we complain a lot, us baby boomers, that people don't, everything's so disposable and nobody's got pride in their craft anymore.
And I think that's the thing, the pride. I don't know that exists like it did, when we were a lot, when our hair was darker.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, Marty's got a comment there or a question. What's up there, buddy?
Yeah, we got a question from Steve J. Ken, how do you see the ability for NASA to build the SLS rocket at the relatively slow rate that seems to be able to truly support human habitation on the moon?
Did you get that?
Yeah.
Steve Jokums, thank you, Steve, for your question.
See if I can provide a good answer here. I think there's definitely a challenge. The pace at which we're going, there's others that are outpacing us. Without naming companies, I think we all know who some of those are. I think NASA would benefit by becoming a little more innovative. There might be too much of the old school thought process. This is the way we've always done it, kind of thing, which that's just not where we are as a society today. I think evolution is definitely key. Change is hard for people, though. People are comfortable doing things the old way. So it's injecting new blood. I think would be a great idea. So hopefully they can leap that chasm of uncertainty and get into a more innovative posture. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Well, the bottom line there, and thank you, Steve Jokers, for that question, is you've always been on the crude side, sending humans to space. And so I could see there be a resistance. We don't want to change too much because this is tried and true how we're going. I mean, look at Russia is still flying a 40-year-old spacecraft designed 40 years ago. And I've learned a lot about Russian technology from astronauts and other workers. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, Russia says. All right, and they make their stuff pretty hardy to begin with. But so is that part of it that we're dealing with human lives here, and we don't want to go too far outside the box that we comfortable with?
Well, we've dealt with human lives. Human spaceflight's been around since the early '60s. I don't know if we've. I use the term paralysis by analysis a lot. I don't know if we've gotten so careful that we've become just tremendously risk averse. And one of the things I've learned over the years is you can't design the risk out of anything, whether it's an automobile or an airplane or a spaceship. There's got to be an acceptable level of risk where you just get stuck.
Yeah, some of the old timers, and I'm talking the Apollo guys, say, you got to take risks. You can't be avoiding risks all the time. Let me have a little sip here as Dave Stangy's watching. Thank you for my Detroit Motor City Cup there, Dave. He's up in Michigan. That question's probably from him, huh, Marty?
Nope, it's from Dean Babcock.
Oh, hi, Dean.
And what is the lead time for parts for the crawler, being that it's over 50 years old?
Well, we just did a complete refurbishment of the Alco diesel engines and the generator sets on the crawler. And Fairbanks Morris was one of our big suppliers, and it was a very quick turnaround. The parts were readily available. It's not brand new technology, but generators and diesel engines haven't changed that much over the years. So parts were fairly easy to get. And the turnaround time for the shoes, since we were talking about those earlier, it's about a year for one set, 8 to 12 months to get a full set of shoes.
Good question there, Dean. We're going to talk about the bittersweetness of 13 years ago. We got some slides racked up with that. Talk a little more about Artemis. Have a little fun at the end with some Purdue knots in the Indy 500. So stick around as we have Ken Joseph here with us. I'd like to know a little more about Ken. Where'd you grow up? And I understand your father was involved in the Apollo era.
That's true. I was born in South Jersey in 1958, which is the same year NASA was founded.
All right.
My
NASA baby, then.
Yeah,
technically.
pretty much. Yeah. Mom and Dad were born and raised in Philadelphia, so they migrated east to South Jersey. That's where that came from.
Sorry about that. But could have stayed in Amish country.
Well, they actually, I guess Philly is kind of Amish country. But So, Dad worked for RCA while we were up there, and when I was 3 years old, we went overseas to England. He was working on a ballistic missile early warning system for the Europeans for Great Britain actually, and RCA was building a lot of the components for that. So that was like a 3 year. Living in a foreign country as a kid. I was only 3 when we went over. I was a little over 5 when we came back, but I was just telling somebody the other day, surprising how much I remember as a kid going up hillsides to old castles and things like that, do the exploring. Came back to Jersey. Dad was still working for RCA. And
other siblings in your family?
Yeah, I'm the second oldest. I've got an older sister and 2 younger sisters.
Okay.
Older sister's in California. The middle sister's up in Nashville, North Carolina. We talked about that earlier. And then my youngest sister lives up in Gainesville.
All right. So you were spoiled by women then.
Yeah, wow. I always had my own bedroom, so that was nice.
Yeah, that was cool too. Yeah, good point there. RCA, such a powerhouse of the 60s and 70s and the communication systems, and your dad was heavily involved with that, right?
And they were a huge presence at the Space Center early in the program too. And my dad was involved in that. When we came back from England, he continued to work for RCA and was working on a lot of the lunar module subcontracts that Grumman had issued out to RCA for communications, radar antennas that were deployed on the surface of the moon, or to be deployed on the surface of the moon, and also the communications antenna on the lunar module itself, among other things. RCA was really big in component manufacturing for the space program.
Absolutely pioneers. They had a big part of the lunar module communications with Grumman that Marty was part of. But the day that you moved into a new house in Florida was kind of a big day, as I'm looking at my notes you sent me here.
July 16th, 1969, the day that they launched Apollo 11 to the moon. So that was a huge deal. I remember walking down to the beach with my mom, my sisters, and we watched the launch from the beach, and I thought, wow, they do this here. This is pretty cool. Never thinking that I would end up working in the space program, but the way things, panned out. When I got out of college in 1981, I interviewed a bunch of different places, the Space Center being one of them, and I was like, how can I turn this down? How could I say no?
I'm smiling. 2 men in this room that saw the Apollo 16 launch with their own eyes, you and Marty there. Of course, I was glued to Walter Cronkite on CBS probably. I think it was a little after 9 in the morning. Do you remember anything about it?
It was hot. It was early in the morning. The movers were coming that day to the house. My dad stayed at the house to wait for them. And like I say, we were at the beach, came home, and I do remember that 3 days later or so, when they actually got to the moon, boxes piled up all over the house, but the TV was up and running, so we could watch what was going on. So that was pretty special.
Black and white?
Black and white. Oh, yeah.
An RCA TV,
More than
too,
likely,
no doubt.
yes.
Yeah. I can see that RCA TV. It kind of had an oval roundish screen to it there, yeah, in there. We love talking about this stuff. You're a graduate of UCF in 1981. That was early days of UCF.
They were largely
University of Central Florida.
Commuter school, largely. I think their total enrollment, including commuters, is about 14,000. And now it's one of the highest enrollments in the country, if not the highest. So it was a good school to get an education at the time. College is tempting for a young boy.
Right.
I wanted to go to the University of Florida, but I knew enough then to know that was probably not the place I was going to get an education. So UCF was a good choice.
Yeah. I went to Ohio State. My education wasn't as good as my party skills at
and that's
OSU
what I wanted.
there.
That's what I wanted to avoid.
Well, we're enjoying this conversation with Ken Joseph. He's a new friend here at the American Space Museum. Got a background with his dad. And was your mom just stay at home, or did she
for a
work,
while?
or?
She actually ended up working at Harris for about 10 years while we were still in high school and junior college. Probably more of a stay-at-home mom, for most of, my upbringing, but she definitely did get into the workforce.
We're going to see a photo of them from your late parents, by the way. out here at the 13 years ago with Apollo or shuttle STS-135. Anything else about growing up that were you? What kind of hobbies did you have? Were you always kind of a space kid, or
No,
or
well,
is
I mean,
this?
growing up a block and a half from the beach, I got into surfing,
Yeah.
played baseball, at Little League and Senior League, played baseball in high school for a couple of years. Was in the band in high school.
What instrument?
I played clarinet and saxophone.
Oh, okay. You like jazz music?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I actually in junior high school, my band director wanted me to play saxophone in the jazz band, so that's when I picked that
I
up.
like Dexter Gordon, saxophone player. Everybody's got their own in there, but very cool, very good. And I wanted to segue from that into just sort of, you happen to land a job in 1981. Tell us how that happened and what kind of job that was.
Well, graduated from ECF in June of '81. Went on, did the interview thing that all college graduates, I guess, are supposed to do. Interviewed a couple of different places, all in state. Was able to, through a friend, got an interview at Kennedy Space Center with a United Technologies division, United Space Boosters Incorporated, USBI,
Right.
and they did the stacking and the integration of the solid rocket boosters for the shuttle. They liked what they heard. They made me an offer, and like I said earlier, how could I have said no? I mean, there I am, growing up on the Space Coast, and now I'm working in the space program. So
And that was a financial job?
yes. I worked, started, trained with experienced people, and learned all about, started learning about government budgeting and, contractors and that kind of thing. And first couple of years, just going through the motions, learning. It's a lot to take on, but it was very interesting. The perks were awesome. Obviously, got to see launches and things like that. Got to walk the hardware, and something to this day that still flabbergasts me is the sheer size of things that are part of our space program, and people on the outside, I don't think they understand. They don't realize, how big things are. I went with my sister. She was in town from California. We took the tour at the visitor center a couple months ago, and the Atlantis exhibit just floored her. She had no idea, how big it was. And like I say, until you're standing next to it, you just have no clue. So it was just really, I was probably fascinated my first couple of years out there. And then I realized, really learn what goes on out here. Really, become a productive employee.
What turned you on to mathematics and ciphering, if you will?
Well, it's funny. I was a marketing major, but it came with a lot of accounting and stuff like that, which I hated. I hate doing accounting. I never wanted to be the green eye shade.
Okay,
arm
that's
band
what I was
guy.
trying to get at. You seem a different
But
pathway there.
I like math, and I was always pretty good at it. So when somebody said, when on the interviews, would you be interested in doing this kind of work? My first thought was, I didn't verbalize it, of course. My first thought was, well, as long as I'm not doing general ledger kind of, and no offense to folks that are on the accounting side, just
Right.
not my cup of tea. So the budgeting is, right, you round up to the next $100,000 kind of a thing. General
Okay.
ledger is, you're taking it out to the dollars and cents. It's got
Yeah.
all balance. So it was a more flexible way to work, and being able to marry that up with, like say, the technical aspect of things, because whoever it was that said it, no Bucks, no Buck Rogers, right?
There you go. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers. That's for sure. Are you the guy that the buck stops here?
No, I mean, I report to a higher power, but I am able to provide opinion and strategize and strategies and say, here's what we ought to do. Here are a couple of things, a couple of different ways we can go. Don't always get the final say, but the opinions are always considered. So it's work for a great group of people, and it's nice to be able to have the discussions. There's nothing's ironclad. It's always
Well, I like the fact that there's a few gray hairs like you in the Artemis program there.
there's a lot of us.
I'm at the stage of my life where I'm looking around and go, man, are you kidding me? I'm the oldest person in the room here at this committee meeting or whatever. Which is my question is, does that lend some good respect of 4 decades this man's been working with our nation's budget for space.
Yeah, I think there's some level of respect. I think you, over the course of my career, run into the individuals that don't want to be bothered with the budget. You get this wave, oh, you budget guys. Oh, I'm sorry, it's not a bottomless pit. But I think when you can have a conversation with an engineer or a technician without actually being one and be involved in the conversation at their level, yeah, that comes with some respect and generates some. So it's a good feeling.
Well, I'm enjoying this conversation with Ken Joseph. Hope that you are out there. Marty, we've got another question.
Yeah, a question from Dean Babcock. Ken, could you explain the material part requisition process used at NASA? I know in my old job as a buyer, it involved a lot of different approvals.
Same today. For example, I could generate what's called a purchase requisition, and it would go through an approval cycle, through levels of management, depending on the price of whatever the item is. It would go to procurement, and a buyer would go, find sources to, provide that whatever it was we were looking to get, and they would compete. They would go for best price, best value, timeliness of delivery based on schedules when we might need it, and there are various level of approvals still. And like I say, a lot of it, anything over $2,500 has to be competitively bid these days. I don't know what it was like a while ago, but seems like an awfully low price to me, but it is what it is. So there are still multiple levels, multiple touches that a requisition would have to go through before you actually get the item that you want to buy.
Great question, Dean. I got the question. It's made fun of a lot, even in movies and so forth. This whole rocket was built by the lowest bidder.
That's what they say.
Now, that's what they say, but what's the truth here, Mr. Budget Crunching Ken Joseph?
I can't disagree with that because, when I started with Jacobs back in 2013, it was the contract was TOSC, TOSC, and now it's Comet. Jacobs won the rebid, and price has a lot to do with it. I think technical capability is a big factor, but at the end of the day, if you're building a house, right, you're going to want to get the best bang for the lowest price. Maybe not the low price, but generally the highest price is not the one that you're going to go with on the house, and I don't think the government does for this kind of work either.
Okay, good answer. Well, we're going to look at some of your scrapbook stuff here that you gave me, and any more questions come up there, we'll be happy to chime in there. There you are at a night landing.
Yeah, I forget which mission this was, but the organization I worked in, one of the managers managed our landing operations group, so I had an opportunity to suit up and get on the convoy and be out on the runway while they were deservicing the vehicle after it landed, which was very exciting.
Why are you suited up? That's not a escape suit.
No, but everybody had to work. Everybody on the landing operations crew had to wear coveralls. That was a requirement. Safety shoes.
And how cool is that? Next to a living, breathing space shuttle on the runway out there.
Very cool. I'd seen a lot of landings, but I'd never seen one up close. And at night, we were staged, ready to come out onto the runway after the vehicle came by, and it came screaming by at about 200 miles an hour. Watched it touch down, roll out, and stopped. We had to hold back until they safed the vehicle because there's a lot of outgassing, and they want to make sure that there were no hazardous.
You see the flame coming out of the CPU exhaust. Mm-hmm. That was always kind of.
So they had to make sure that everything was buttoned up and secure, and then the crew went out to do get the crew. The landing crew went out. You can see the stair truck that goes to the back of the vehicle. They do a lot of safing back there. There's also a stair truck that gets the actual crew off the vehicle. I have some other pictures. I don't think I provided them, but of the crew coming down the stairs, after the landing.
Hey, Marty, another question for Ken?
We have a question and a comment. The comment's just FYI right now. Carlton Bailey is saying the first stage of the next Artemis is arriving in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Just FYI,
Thanks.
But a question from Dave Stange. Ken, are you able to share with us some of the toughest budget decisions you have been part of?
The toughest ones, without a doubt, are when we have to, and we've had to a couple times over my career, lose people. You know, rank the employees and cut headcount because of budget issues. That's, you know, you never want to see anybody put out. So it's always been very uncomfortable. That's, you know, you still do your job, but that's one of the parts of my job that I've always disliked intensely, because you know, you don't want to cut people loose. It's not a fun thing. You wouldn't want it to happen to you,
Yeah.
and you certainly don't want to be a part of the decision where it happens to somebody else, at least from my standpoint.
In your 40 years, how much have you seen, quote, automation take over and people lose jobs because of that?
Wow.
I mean, you were 40 years ago, there were no personal computers.
Right. I was going to
Okay.
say, I think getting away from paper and pencil for scheduling and for well, we were talking about the AVOs earlier, right?
Right. Avoid verbal orders,
verbal
Marty,
orders.
my favorite form. He says it should be avoid oral orders. AOO.
Get it in writing. Don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think in my experience, a lot of the planning and scheduling that we do that used to be, you know, big war room boards.
Yeah, I
and
see.
tape and
We've
that
got
kind
one of the charts in our
yeah.
space workers gallery.
A lot of that's been automated. So I don't know that it caused people to necessarily be laid off or leave. It's just when things recycled, you didn't need to hire as many people, let's say, you know, like on a new contract or something like that. So that's the biggest that I've seen. And actually engineering products too, CAD programs and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, you used to have the big drafting tables.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
that's been a major change also.
But you've seen that. It
Yeah.
has to be a little bit fascinating to see the technology in the space program, you know, go from IBM Selectric secretaries to, shoot me an email on that and I'll get it on
Yeah.
my smart tablet
Well,
or my phone here.
And Teams meetings and Zoom meetings and you
Yeah.
know, not having to, you know, gather, 30 people in a room. You can just do it, from your desk with a headset.
Well, while we're talking about that, we of course, we have an Artemis fueling stage here behind us. Artemis went on despite this horrible pandemic that crippled our country. And we know that you probably worked at home type of thing. What was that like, the 2021
Well,
up to the launch of Artemis November 2022?
So our company, the rule was, if you, obviously technicians can't work from home, right? You can't turn wrenches when you're sitting, in your living room. So hands-on wrench turner types, the technicians, they were on site. Those of us like me in more of an administrative capacity, we were teleworking, and I told my boss after about a month that I couldn't stand it. Was there any way that he could let me come back on site? So he put me on what was called a critical skills list. So I was able to do my work out there, which I like better anyway. I like being able to interface with people face to face, and we had to wear the masks and keep the distance and all that kind of stuff. But I think with a job, whatever capacity you're in on this program or any kind of aerospace program, being on site is the way to go.
Good. Very interesting. Very interesting. We're enjoying Ken Joseph here. Marty, did you have another comment or question?
Yeah, I have my own comment, Mark. Automation did a lot also as far as freeing up engineers and technicians from labor-intensive activities, allow them to do other things and be able to process, in this case, on Space Shuttle, to process the orbiter in less time.
Mm-hmm.
And Marty, from your side, what were some examples of that kind of automation?
We used to have, if you disconnect the connector on the orbiter, I'm sure it's the same thing on the external tanker SRB. You had to, when you reconnected, you had to trace every electrical signal, and it could be a 72-pin connector. So you can take hours of doing retesting, and we had to do that manually to identify what tests you had to run to validate that wire, we'll say. Where we came up with another software program. Matter of fact, Jim Tully, Mark, who works out here, in Dothan, he helped develop that process.
Mm-hmm.
So it just freed up I can't even give you a number of days it freed up, allowing engineers to do more meaningful tasks.
Thank you, Marty, for adding that. Here's another scrapbook picture. There's Atlantis sometime after July 18th when it come back to Earth.
So I was fortunate to have been the recipient of a Spaceflight Awareness Award. So when they were readying Atlantis to go on its final roll, if you will, over to where it was going to be retired, there were opportunities to get the photo op. So I was able to get out there, and there's some other pictures of actually receiving my Spaceflight Awareness Award as a part of the Atlantis retirement.
We've had some great people on our show here, Marty, and I'm thinking of Clay Walker. Clay Walker worked out on Vandenberg as a contractor building the Slick 6 for the space shuttle out there. And I know because of Clay Walker that I think that yellow transport that Atlantis is on was out at Vandenberg. That they hauled an Enterprise for the fit check on that. Down the road there. Does that strike any bells to you?
No, but it doesn't surprise me because I know when they, when it was determined that Vandenberg was not going to be a viable shuttle site, I know that Kennedy got a lot of equipment that they had out there. So it wouldn't surprise me if what you said is actually what happened.
Look, had a little afternoon thunder shower there. Beautiful shot though, but 2 years ago, I was privileged to see Discovery at Smithsonian. Thanks to Marty, we went out there on a trip, a little road trip out there. I haven't seen the Endeavor, but by God, if you haven't seen Atlantis suspended from the ceiling up there,
it was breathtaking. I'll tell you what. The first time I saw it, I had an emotional reaction.
Oh, were you at the people with the screen?
Oh yeah.
And there,
yeah.
I mean, my skin's starting to goosebumps right here just thinking of the reveal of that. It was one of the greatest reveals of anything
absolutely.
when you see it.
Yeah,
there.
It was very like I say, I had a very emotional reaction. It was really something.
And it's still there for a lot of people there. Here are our astronauts. Walheim on the second left there. Bob Benke. I'm sorry, that's Hurley. This was his, and Ken Ferguson was the commander. Hurley went on to command the Demo 2 of Crew Dragon, and Sandy Magnus there. And I always wondered, why didn't they take more people up with them? On the last one, they just took 4, and the logical answer was they packed that mid-deck and everything with all the supplies they could get up there, because this was the last time the shuttle was going to dock with the ISS, so they wanted to take as much up there as they could.
Sorry, because after that we had to rely on the Russians. For our
so that's why they didn't take it. I thought they'd take 2 other people just to punch a ticket for them, type of thing. But no, there's always a pretty good reason that NASA's got their reasons behind things there. We'll be talking more about this flight. Tomorrow we got Mike Ciani coming on with us, and Mike Cinelli, Lessons Learned. I didn't put that slide in there. And we've got Terry White on Thursday, and you certainly know Terry.
I know both of them. We were in Texas at the same time doing the Columbia recovery. Terry ran the helicopter recovery cruise, and I think Mike was stationed at one of the sites. I can't recall which one it was, but he may have actually flown. I can't remember.
So you took part in that. Of course, the horrible tragedy of losing STS-107 on February 1st, 2003. The books I've read about it, particularly Mike Leinbach's book with Jonathan Ward, Bringing Columbia Home, it is an incredible story of how you space workers came together, because we lost 7 crew members, but the 8th loss was the orbiter. You people really tied to these orbiters.
Yeah, it was the crews that worked on the orbiters. I heard many times when I was in Texas working the Columbia recovery. This was a group of technicians. This was their orbiter. This was their and you become attached. I don't think it's a whole lot different than a pet necessarily, right? How attached we get to pets. It just became like another member of your family. So there was definitely an emotional attachment, and they wanted to see it through to the end. And that was, we all did. I mean, it was really a privilege to be a part of it. Tragic reason why, but privileged to be a part of that whole operation.
Did you go back for the 20th anniversary?
I did not.
Okay,
No.
I know some did there, but well, let's get to some happy things here. There, you getting an award. There's Janet Petro and
No, actually,
Pastor-
that's Patty Stratton.
oh, is it?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Patty
I thought-
and Bob Cabana and
Sorry, it looked like Janet. Dan Burbank,
Dan Burbank.
the second Coast Guard astronaut, with
Okay.
Bruce Melnick's the first one.
Didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
cool.
that popped in my mind when we were talking about Dan there. What kind of things you get there to put on your wall?
Just a picture, plaque, some other goodies, but just said, for the outstanding support to our nation's, shuttle program.
You worked under a few Kennedy Space Center directors. There's one
That's
of the
true.
longest tenured one. On the left there, Mr. Cabana, 12 years.
And recently our deputy administrator
Yeah.
for NASA.
Yeah, just retired. I know he's enjoying retirement too.
I tell you, I'm amazed that he took that long to get out. The rumor was, when's
Yeah, he's living on the coast here. He's got an airplane out at Merritt Island
that's
Airport.
good for him.
Ran into him not too long ago at the Zarellas, and he said, "Mark, I don't have to think about America's space program anymore. Other people are doing that." But what a great leader he was, and an outstanding astronaut. Yes, Marty. Question.
Yep, Dean Babcock's asking, would it have been feasible to still have at least one functional space shuttle to use?
I think straight up yes, if the government wanted to pay for it. But the hue and cry that I always heard was because we have to move on to the next program, we can't afford to run two programs simultaneously. A lot of us would have liked to at least seen the shuttle continue to fly until Artemis came online. The gap is what really hurts a lot of us, going 11 years without flying.
Yeah, it's just amazing, the gap there. I've heard both ways. I've heard good arguments to keep a shuttle, and then others that it was just getting a little bit obsolete. And then, of course, the bottom line to you budget people, $500 million a launch. $500 million a launch, correct?
Space isn't cheap.
Right. So,
but yes, that's true. That was the figure that we
here's
always...
another little scrapbook there of that you had there with the.
So that's with my parents. They came to the ceremony.
Oh, great!
So this little out of sequence there. I think there's another picture.
Yeah, here's a picture.
Oh, that's
of
the
Mom
one.
and
Yeah,
Dad there.
where we're
There's
actually
your
at.
mom.
So that was
Let's
a
make that smaller there.
beautiful day. They were rolling Atlantis from up on the north end of the center to the south end, where we were there out front of the headquarters building for the eventual move over to the facility that the Atlantis facility that they've built.
And what was your dad's name?
My dad's name is Bill. My mom's name is Nancy.
Bill and Nancy. What did Bill think about this shuttle era that he watched?
He was always a huge space fan, obviously, working in the program a bit for RCA, just was always very, very much in favor of it. Thought it was, had seen shuttle launches from afar, had never seen one this close. So he was very, very excited to be there.
That's
And
what
I
a
was
great shot. What a
excited to
great
have them
memory
there.
with your folks there for sure, man. That's
Definitely.
two generations there of space workers there, and the proud wife that had to be proud of you, what you've done there. So thanks for moving us around there, Marty. And there, all right, now whoa, wait a minute there. Okay. There's our green screen that we use there. That's always historic days when we get new hardware coming in to the canal barge, right?
Right, that's the offload from the barge at the turn basin and at the Artemis 1 core stage. And again, the group that I work with, my heavy equipment group, my crane guys, they're integral in assisting with that offload. Once that moves into the transfer aisle of the VAB, there's a lot of work to be done on it. So our heavy equipment riggers, they put up all kinds of scaffolding and access to be able to get to the different pieces and parts. Mm-hmm. And again, I'm very impressed. It always impresses me to this day. But you can see how big that thing is relative to the people that are walking beside it and in front of it. It's enormous.
Yeah, the dimensions are something. Which I always look at the support structures, like what that's on has to be built, and that's a modern marvel too, all of its own. Some of these, and you probably had to deal with buying pieces and parts for those too.
Absolutely, yeah. And what's really interesting about those transports, they're all hand operated. There's nobody driving them. They're driving them with a remote control, like a Game Boy looking thing.
Huh.
So that was really cool. And there was a guy. There's two of the vehicles there, and there was somebody operating the one on the front and then the one on the back where the engines are. So a lot of coordination there to get that thing squared up and in the VAB.
Didn't know that. Thought there might be a little guy in a seat driving those things, but they're like you said, a Game Boy deal. Well, here's pictures you took. There's the Artemis rollout, the first one I gathered.
But yeah,
in August, the August that got scrubbed. That
right.
was in there. The moon's up there, really cool shot there. And the night shot.
That's when we finally got to the pad. We were hard down. That was actually the next morning early from when we started rolling out. But
the first rollout, not when they had to bring it in.
Right. No, it wasn't the rollout for the launch. It was a rollout for the scheduled launch, but then they had to come back and then they ended up rolling out again. So this is the first time we rolled the vehicle out.
And there you are there. And
that's a very recent picture after the Artemis 1 launch. A lot of damage to the mobile launcher. So it was on the pad for a while, rolled it to the park site, did a lot of work on it, and rolled it back to the pad. And we're scheduled to come back into the VAB the 23rd of next month to begin the stacking operations for Artemis 2.
Oh, really? Artemis 2 is still over a year away, but we got to get ready for it. What can you comment about that pad damage of one of the most powerful rockets to leave the Earth?
The damage that was done to the mobile launcher was exceeded anything anybody really thought was going to happen. There were, welded sections of tubing that were literally ripped apart. Elevator doors were blown inward. Nobody had any idea of what the launch-induced environment, the LIE, was going to be. And it created more chaos than I think anybody ever imagined. So consequently, there's been a lot of work that has had to been done. A lot of strengthening, stiffening, hardening of structures to hopefully avoid the same thing from happening, with Artemis 2.
We had one extra stage on the SRBs, okay, and one more engine. Those were the contributing factors that kind of caught them by surprise? Or?
I think that, and also, if you remember, the shuttle, I don't know how to say this the right way, but one of the SRBs was outboard. The way it was configured on the pad, there was an inboard and an outboard SRB, and then the three main engines. Artemis, everything is right there, so I think all the way up the tower, everything is just blasting it the entire way.
It was quite a sight to see it at the middle of the night.
It was a beautiful launch.
Sure.
There's no
In fact,
doubt about that.
we've got that site right there. There's Mark Usiak's photograph of the launch in November 2022. So we're hopefully by November 2025 to be launching the second crew. There they are, right there.
Actually, the first crew, right?
Yeah, I mean, first crew. Yeah, right. The first crew. Yeah, well, the second all up SLS. Yeah, the first crew there. So they're still training.
So that'll be like an Apollo 8 type of a mission, a lunar orbit mission.
Yeah. Well, it's not an orbit. They're just going to go by the moon. They're not even going to orbit.
See that? You know something that I don't.
No, they're not going to orbit.
Okay.
They're going to go within 3,000 miles. It's basically a free return to go around.
Okay.
Like Artemis 1 did, that we see the picture here of, which begs the, why, but environmental systems and everything, it needs to be checked out right, and then hopefully go into the moon in either this vehicle or this vehicle. And what do you think as we're looking to go into the moon, and the moon. This is the Blue Origin Blue Moon. Not exactly. It's an early concept of that. More like the Apollo lunar lander versus the Starship. That's got a lot of things going on. I understand the next Starship launch, it might be in 4 weeks. I saw a
Really?
little
Wow.
blurb on that within the next 4 weeks we'll have another Starship. Your comment about this beast of a spaceship?
They're making great progress. I think just from a pacing standpoint, I would have to put my money on the Starship. Blue Origin, I don't know that they don't have a good product, but I just think they're pretty far behind where SpaceX is right now.
We've been waiting for that New Glenn rocket to launch
That's-
off that beautiful
right.
Pad 36. They got that
yeah.
that campus is incredible across the street from the visitors complex, but they've not put anything in orbit yet.
That and it takes time, and I get it. It's not to disparage them. I just think there's somebody else leading the race right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And they just pegged their 320th first stage landing on a barge out in the middle of the ocean. Now, you did bring back 133 space shuttles. NASA has been in the reusable business
Yes,
a long
absolutely.
time. Okay.
Absolutely.
But we should have been bringing back these first stage boosters a long time ago, maybe on some of the Atlas generations and Deltas and so forth. But c'est la vie. But just to button up on the final thing on Artemis, what can the man on the streets look? Are we really going to land on the moon with this type of system?
Yeah, I think we can. I think we will. I think there's enough forward thinking to where if everybody collaborates, right? NASA, Blue, SpaceX, Boeing, whomever. I think it's going to take a joint effort. I don't think any one entity is going to be able to do it on their own. I think it's got to be collaborative.
Yeah, it's as very complicated as it is for sure, and we know that China is very ambitious.
Yeah.
And I think, I hate to say it, but there's a better chance we're going to have Chinese on the moon before Americans. What do you think?
Well, before we're on it again.
Yeah.
Right, we were there
Again,
first.
yeah,
right?
we were first. Absolutely. Again, is right. So, we've been enjoying this conversation with Ken about his space business career. He's got a mighty fine golf shirt on here, and you like to hit the sticks there. We're going to talk a little bit about why you're here today, because you met our board president, Larry Osterley. You've known Larry, and he invited you to somewhere where you go, have been several times, and that's the Indianapolis 500.
That is correct. So the gentleman in the previous picture on the right side is a good friend, Jim Taylor, and Jim and I both worked for Larry under USA, and this was probably, I'm trying to think, this was probably back in 2022 maybe, 21 or 22. I used to, JT, Jim Taylor and I, we would drive up to Indy. We'd drive to Tennessee the first day and go to southern Indiana. And he grew up in Indiana, so we always would get a hold of a couple of his friends and say, hey, why don't you meet us at such and such a golf course in southern Indiana, and we'll play golf on Thursday morning. So that's what that picture is. That's on the 18th hole at a course called Sultan's Run. And after we got done there, we drove into Indy proper. This last year, or this past May, got another opportunity to go up there and found out that Larry was going to go. So one night we were sitting around the house that we had rented, and we were, having a couple of cocktails and talking about the good old days and the space program and so on and so forth. And Larry asked me if I'd be interested in coming out here and meeting you and doing this podcast. And I thought, yeah, what a great opportunity. So
we're talking about Larry Osterley here on our board. Yes, Larry said adult beverages and cigars were involved.
There were a couple of those.
The event there. So, well, we're glad that Larry recommended you. Certainly has been a fascinating story. The Indianapolis 500, you're not going to let me get away without talking about the greatest spectacle in racing, because my grandfather, Mel Marquette, was in the first two Indy 500s, and anytime I get to brag about it, I will here. He died in 1961, but that 1911 and 1912, he was in the first Indies, and yep, Marquette was one of the first to wreck a car at the Indy 500.
That is so awesome.
Okay, there's Gramps' number 23 McFarland in turn 3. Tires were such a big deal back then too, but of course the cars today are just unbelievable. The lap times were 75 miles an hour.
Ooh.
And now they're pushing 300 and what, 20?
I think the qualifying.
I mean, two, not 300.
Yeah,
That's
qualifying was like 234 or something like that.
230.
Yeah.
NHRA dragsters hit 300 on there. But how do I tie in space with this? You all are asking. Well, here are some Purdue knots on the sacred bricks of Indy. By the way, greatest spectacle in racing. Yes, no.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just a tremendous. Yeah, you can't.
And you go to Daytona, you told me, and other place. It's just unbelievable. It's just so unique. And
It's yeah. If you haven't been, it's hard to describe what it's like.
Yeah.
Or have somebody understand, because it's like, okay, what's the big deal about cars going around in a circle? The people that I tell both about Indy and Daytona, since you brought Daytona up, is stand outside at the Space Center and watch a launch. Okay, it's not only visual, but you also feel it. Okay, same thing at a racetrack. You feel it. It's not. It's a total body sensation.
and even smell it sometimes. The fuel in the air and so forth. It is. But here's our Purdue knots up there. We've got on the left is really an interesting Beth Moses. She's been to space 4 times suborbital with the Virgin Galactic deal. Audrey Powers is beside her, a Blue Origin suborbital astronaut. I didn't write down the name of the other lady there, but in the middle you got Pam Melroy, the second female commander of a space shuttle. She was number 2. She is number 2 behind Nelson now at NASA.
Oh, is
Pam
okay.
is, yeah.
Took Cabana's.
Cabana was actually 3rd. He was.
Oh.
He was the assistant deputy.
Oh, okay.
And Pam is the deputy director to Nelson, and she's a Purdue knot. This was taken during the April 11th total eclipse of the sun, where they had a big event there. And Purdue has over 24 astronauts graduated, just like this great state of Ohio, where I'm from, has 24 astronauts that were born in Ohio. We got Pambo. Some of you recognize Mark Polanski there, a great shuttle pilot and commander. You've got Megan MacArthur, still an active astronaut, and Drew Feutzel there, left to right on the famous yard of bricks at the Indy 500 there. So, and we've got a birthday today. John Casper's birthday is today, Colonel, Air Force Colonel. There he is in space. I forgot to write down where he was born, but it's on Facebook there. He doesn't consider, he grew up at a different place there. Marty's going to tell me real quick on there. And there he is. And he's 81 today. All right. And
happy birthday.
Once a pilot and 3 times a commander. And I think there's something special. Usually you're twice a pilot and then a commander, particularly in the early days there. Marty, where was he born?
Give me a second.
Oh, he's pulling it up there. One factoid I forgot to bring with me here. So, looking at John Casper there, floating around in space. He's our birthday boy today, 81. That's a familiar number, isn't it, Marty?
Yeah.
He's going to bring that up. We'll get to that in just a second, where John is from. Also, a Star Trek fan on there. There's a good day fishing. For you?
One of my hobbies, I love to fish for bass, love to do freshwater fishing, and I couldn't even tell you what year that was, but we went down to Fellsmere down south, and there's a lot of what used to be farmland and pasture land that has recently been, I'll say, reflooded, because way back in the day, the Army Corps of Engineers dammed up a lot of areas to create, farmland for agriculture and stuff like that. Well, they're reclaiming the wetlands, if you will. So this area was I think it's called Lake Fellsmere. I can't even remember, but anyway, flooded impoundment. it's a catch and release impoundment only. You can catch anything you want, but you've got to throw it back in. And
Oh,
so I
interesting.
hooked into a little 8-pound bass that day, which was fun.
Marty, where's Mr. Casper born?
Greenville, South Carolina.
But he considers another place his hometown. Oh, you didn't see that part of it
You
there.
didn't ask me that.
Yeah, he was born in Greenville. Yeah, yeah, I know. But anyway, yeah, Greenville, South Carolina. Been there many times, of course.
Gainesville, Georgia.
Yeah, Gainesville, Georgia. He as a child he went to Gainesville, Georgia. A lot of astronauts claim, they're born somewhere, but they hardly ever live there anywhere. Would you know the 3 states that don't have astronauts born in them?
Oh my God.
Perhaps. Well, I'll take you off the hook. Anybody know? I know you guys. It's Nevada, Vermont, and Wyoming are the only 3 states that have an American astronaut.
That's pretty
born.
amazing.
It is. It is. Yeah.
47 states. you
Yeah.
know.
Rhode Island. I don't know who's
Yeah.
from there.
Yeah. Alaska.
Alaska. There's an astronaut from Alaska. Hawaii. I think El Onizuka is our Hawaiian astronaut there. Threw this picture in because you had it in there, having a lot of fun with people. The Indy 500 group that you went there, so you can have all them say you need to see your face on Stay Curious, because I was with this guy named Mark, and but I've enjoyed this today.
This
really,
has been great. I can't thank you enough for asking me to be a part of it.
Well, thank Larry Osterly, and I do thank Larry for all he does. Here is our good friend Chris Calley, did this beautiful montage of the Artemis. We have behind you here, as I make it smaller, the Mercury astronauts on there. And just to let you know that we celebrate the Artemis program. We love what you're doing. We hope that we can get to the moon and stay there. That's the important thing.
Yeah.
It's just not putting the American flag down in that dirty soil again, but to go back and really
Have a
create a
presence.
base, a
Yeah.
presence, because us baby boomers, Ken, we thought that we'd have bases like Antarctica with 30 or 50 people rotating them out all the time, and it just hasn't come to fruition. Part of the reason is because it's so hard, right?
It is hard. It costs a lot of money. Unfortunately, I was just thinking when we were talking about this, there was, after Apollo, right? We went to the moon. There was something called the Apollo Applications Program, and it was supposed to be space stations and bases on the moon, and the money just wasn't there. So it's if somebody can figure out a way to make this cheaper, maybe that it happens sooner. But to me, that's the biggest linchpin right now.
Yeah, it is. The money's the linchpin. How much has inflation affected your process here the last year?
I think like everyone else in anything, if everything's more expensive. Supply lines are more expensive. Wages are getting higher, and it's you can't afford to hire as many people because the demands for pay are so much higher. So it's all cyclical, and it ripples, right?
The ripples, which are the effect. Yeah. We're talking. We're glad people are making good wages that are working in fast food places. Okay, but because that minimum wage has gone up to $12 to $15 an hour, instead of that lunch where I'd go through a drive-through for years and it cost me $7.50, now it's like
twice
$12.50.
Yeah, whatever.
Right. For the same thing, but. You got to look at, part of that is that people are being paid some better wages. So it's a vicious circle. Money always is. But which is another thing to look at the Apollo era that your dad worked in. Ken, is during the Apollo era, we had the Vietnam War going on. That was a tremendous financial drain.
Absolutely.
And the civil rights movement going on. That was funneling money into areas that needed it, so forth. So there's always something going on. In there, Dave Stange. Hope Dave's enjoyed this up in Michigan. Doug Force is in Los Angeles. Bill Whiting, another Michigander up there. We mentioned Robert Law. We miss Bill Whiting. Miss you down here too, Bill, at the astronaut autograph stuff. Steve Jokums, Carlton Bailey. Gary Gerald is our peanut Vidalia onion farmer up in Georgia.
Wow.
And he brought me a whole bushel basket full of Vidalias, just
Nice.
fresh off the farm. Dean Babcock, thank you for your wonderful questions. Astronomer Popular, is watching. Tom Usiak's in Pennsylvania. I knew Cliff Watson would be having his Wednesday morning breakfast on Pomona, Australia. And John the Beagle Dad is watching today. William Reedy. Oh, the astronaut from Rhode Island, William Reedy.
Wow.
All right. I think we've met him, haven't we, Marty?
I don't think so. I haven't.
Oh, okay. But thank you, Marty, for that quick fact check there. Anything that I didn't ask you that you'd like to share about your career?
No, I think we've covered it. You know, Marty, thanks for piping the questions in and asking some questions. And Mark, thanks for, putting this all together. This has been great. And thanks to everybody that asked questions. I really hope I was able to provide some good answers and, give y'all another little slice of what this whole space worker thing is about.
Well, we certainly did. And like we said, we consider you a national treasure. And you'd maybe be good at one of our shuttle fests that we have in April as a panel talking about the money and so forth then there. Ken, thoroughly enjoyed meeting
Mark,
you. Don't be a
same
stranger
here.
here.
I will not. And if any event comes up and you think I might be able to provide something, let me know. Be happy
We'll
to
be
do it.
glad to. And don't work so hard. Start thinking about more fishing and less work.
I've recently converted to modified full-time, so I'm on a bit of a reduced hours schedule. So I'm getting to enjoy basically every Friday off these days. So
Well,
that's kinda
good.
nice.
Well, good for you. Well, we hope that you all enjoyed this edition of Stay Curious. We've done over 1,090 episodes now, so go to our YouTube channel and see if you could find something to occupy your time. You're going to learn a lot from these space workers, we're just so blessed that we can provide this forum for people like you, because who else is providing this forum? Nobody. Your favorite nonprofit, the American Space Museum, is, and we need your help. You can contribute anytime on our website. Or directly involved with us here, as we're one of the nonprofits that's being hit hard by the inflation and things, the cost of everything going up. And our income's very limited here at the American Space Museum. So we're glad that you can do what you can. But I'll tell you what I'd love for you to do is come back tomorrow when we're going to have Mike Chinelli here talking about lessons learned. After all, he helped build that wonderful remembrance there
Up on the 16th floor of the VAB.
Well, he's over the 16th floor. I'm talking about underneath Atlantis, where we honor our fallen heroes.
That is
those
awesome
cases. Too. Mike had a lot to put with the families to put the things in those cases in there. So Mike Chinelli tomorrow, and Terry White. You know him. He's got that handlebar mustache. We'll see how the humidity is outside when he hits the door here on Thursday. So until then, I'm Mark Marquette, thanking our guest Ken Joseph, and thanking you for watching and saying, I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us. Thanks a lot.
Everyone.